Hello friends and welcome to the Southern Mountain Kitchen. Today we're making glazed yeasted doughnuts. So what we're going to do is start out with our mixer before we even put the dough hook on, and we're going to add 4.5 cups of all-purpose flour, a half a cup of granulated sugar, 1 teaspoon of rapid rise yeast. And once we get this in here, we're going to mix this by hand a little bit to get it totally mixed through the flour, the yeast, and the sugar before we actually add anything else to this or even start our mixer. Once you get this mixed, then we're going to add to this 1.5 cups of milk. And once you get the milk in, you can go ahead and add the dough hook onto your mixer at this point. And we're going to start this out on low and just mix this up a bit before we add anything else too. And once this gets pretty mixed up, we're going to add 1 large egg to this. And what we're going to do is run the mixer for a couple of minutes, maybe 2 or 3, to get everything incorporated before we stop. And then we're going to put plastic wrap around the bowl and the dough hook to let this sit for a while before we do anything else. And it's going to need to sit for about 20 minutes. So as you can see, everything is pulling together here. And this is what we wanted to do because we wanted to actually hook onto the dough hook and stay there for the most part. And now we're going to turn this off, put on the plastic wrap, and like I said, let it sit for about 20 minutes. This actually is time for it to form a little bit of gluten, and that's going to help it actually work better to make the donuts. Now, when we take off the plastic wrap, we are going to add some salt to this, which we are adding in 1.5 teaspoons of table salt. The reason we're doing this now is we didn't want this to dry out while it was sitting. So go ahead and turn your mixer back on at least low, and we're going to run this for almost 5 minutes. And what we're going to do next after that is done is we're going to take a stick of butter and cut it into small cubes, and we're going to drop them in and mix it into the actual dough, which you're going to need to run the mixer for about 10 minutes as you're doing this. So if you get your butter in, just make sure that it runs past time, so that way we can actually get all the butter incorporated, mixed through, because the butter is going to be softened at room temperature, so you really want to get it mixed in. If you pulled it out of the refrigerator, it'll be harder to mix in, so you really do want this to have sat for a couple minutes. Now in the meantime, you're going to need a large bowl, which we are going to coat with a cooking spray or oil, because we're going to transfer this dough into it after it's had its time with the butter. So like I said, it needed to run for 10 minutes as the butter was put in, and once that's done, then we're ready to transfer. And as you can see, I'm spraying my bowl because we're going to transfer this over, get it into the bowl, shape it in a bit of a ball, and then we're going to put plastic wrap over it. And then it's going to sit on the counter for about an hour, and then it's going to get transferred to the refrigerator till overnight, so that way the dough is cold so we can work it better to make the donuts. Now the best thing about putting the dough in the refrigerator, it is so easier to work with than if it were a situation where you just took this and used it just now. The cold dough actually sets up better, it's more elastic, it isn't as sticky to deal with, and it's so much better to use. And that way when you go to roll it out to cut your donuts, it's a lot easier to manage. So as I said, the dough is going to the refrigerator for overnight after it's set on the counter for 1 hour. And then when it comes back from the refrigerator, you have your dough, which is, it's going to be really firm. As you push on it, you will notice that it's a very firm dough because the cold has helped it hold together so much better than if it were warm. So we're going to put a little bit of flour on a cutting board, and we want to make sure this doesn't stick. Usually it won't. If you just put a little bit of flour with this, it's very forgiving. It's so easy to work with. And you might need a bowl scraper to get this out of your bowl. And we're going to just turn it up, flip it out, and then we are going to have a rolling pin in which we're going to roll this out. And you want to make a rather large rectangle with this when you're doing it, anywhere from 13 by 18 or even bigger if you have dough enough to do it. And you want the dough to be somewhere around, I don't know, 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch thick, because you want this stuff to have room to rise and be bigger donuts. So kind of shape it like a rectangle as you go. Put some flour on top of it before you hit it with the rolling pin so it doesn't stick at all, and then just roll this out. Make sure you put a little bit of flour on your rolling pin so it doesn't stick to that either. And once you get the shape that you want out of this, you will need something to cut it with. And I have like biscuit cutters which come in multiple sizes. They're just basically round rings. I use ones that for the outer edge is 3 inches and the inner edge is like the smallest one there is in there, which I think is about 1 inch all the way across. And then just go to it cutting these out. The best thing is though, once you cut your donut circles for the large circle and then you take out the parts for the center of it, there's still a lot of room on here for you to use the small cutter to make donut holes, because you know you're going to pull the center out of the donuts anyway, and that's a donut hole to begin with. And just collect them together because you can easily cook these right after you cook the donuts, and it's even more to eat. If you see me flipping the dough back and forth, I always like to put a little extra flour underneath to make sure this isn't going to stick when I go to do the cutting, because you don't want your donuts to be stuck to the board. So once you have a nice even thickness to all of your dough, and it's a large kind of rectangular shape, you're about ready to go ahead and cut. So just make sure that you have it at least the thickness you want it to be before you cut. And this is my cutter for the large circles. And you're just going to cut through these, leave them in place until you take the centers out, and then we're going to transfer them. You're going to need a large pan to put these on, and what I suggest you doing is take some like wax paper, parchment paper, put it onto your pan and spray it with nonstick cooking spray, so that way when these are set on it to rise, and they're going to be on there for quite a while, they don't actually stick to your pan and they're very easy to get up without a problem. And now you can see I have the small cutter, which I'm taking the centers out. Now the centers are going to come out as you go. Just set them to the side of your cutting board, and that way you can collect them for later. And the best thing about this, as you can see as I'm cutting through some of these, the actual donuts are moving. That means that the flour underneath has definitely stopped them from sticking to the board. So this is my pan, and I have parchment paper in here, and I'm spraying it with an even coating of nonstick cooking spray. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take the donuts over one at a time and space them out. Now, depending on how this rolled out, or if there's any difference in the amount of flour, like if there was a little extra in yours or whatever, you're going to get quite a few donuts out of these. I think with mine, I ended up with somewhere around like 14-15 donuts. And then I don't even know how many donut holes came out of this, because there was a huge pile of them when I was done, because I went back and I cut into the dough that wasn't used for the donuts and just kept making donut holes, as many as I could, because why waste the dough, you know? Now you're going to need more than one pan to put these on for them to rise. So you're probably going to need another pan, another piece of parchment paper, and some more spray to set up your next lot of them. Now in between these donuts there's room, so you can put some of the donut holes on there also to rise up, and just space them out to where nothing is really close together, because you want these things to raise, at the best case scenario, about 50% of what they were before, more of what they were before. And they're going to go in your oven. What you need to do is put one rack about midway up and one all the way at the bottom in your oven. And in there you're going to put in a container with boiling water with about a cup of it into something like a baking pan on the bottom, and then put the donuts in on the top to let them rise up. And you're going to leave them in there for at least 45 minutes to an hour. In the meantime, you're going to heat your oil up in a pan, and you want to get it up to 350 degrees, which this is already in my container, and you want it just to take its time getting up to 350 degrees. And I don't suggest overloading this. I would put in at least 4 of these at a time, and it's going to take about 1.5 to 2 minutes on each side to get these cooked. The secret to turning these things around in your oil is chopsticks, because if you have 2 of them, you can easily put one in the center and one on the side and flip them around, but you can use one of them to move them around in the oil to get them to where they need to be to get done. Check them after about a minute to see how the bottom is, because you're going to go for a desired level of brownness. You want it to get this kind of tannish brownish look on the bottom, and you know what a donut looks like. And once you've hit that, then you flip them. So I spin mine around a bit into the pan, and then I flip them over when they're about, I'd say about 1.5 minutes. And as you're going to see in a second how mine turn, and then there's color on the bottom. So take your 2 chopsticks and flip. And that's what we're looking for right there. And once they flip over, you're going to let the other side go for at least 1.5 minutes or whatever, but continue to check to make sure they're done. Now once these donuts come out, you're going to have a pan that you're going to want to sit to the side and put a couple layers of paper towels on it so they can drip dry. So that way you don't have oil all over the place. And then we're going to take 3 1/4 cup of confectioner's sugar. We're going to add a 1/2 cup of hot water to it, and then just a pinch of salt. And we're going to mix this together, and this is going to be the glaze that you dip your donuts into. So stir it until it actually becomes this really smooth, velvety looking substance that it's amazing when this changes, because it's so smooth, and as you can see in my video, it looks like a totally different thing once you've got it mixed up. Put your donut in there, use your chopsticks again. We're going to flip this back and forth until we feel it's coated enough, and then you're going to bring it out to the wire rack that's on top of a pan, because these are going to drip a bit, and you're going to let them cool there. And you're just going to let them sit until they've had time to sit up and the icing actually dries a bit on the outside of it, and then you are pretty much ready to eat. So like I said, just flip your donuts around in the icing a bit and just go through one after another. And then if you have the donut holes, you can do the same thing, just like popping them into the oil, cooking them, bringing them, and then bringing them into the icing and mixing them around and sitting them on top of the wire rack as well to cool. And when you're done, they look something like this, and these donuts are delicious and pillowy, and they have a great taste. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. And if you get a chance, check out my cookbook, which is available on Amazon and in bookstores worldwide. Have a great day.